John Fox with the Design Build Ascend show, Design Build Ascend. And we have a special guest here with us tonight. And we're going to introduce her in a minute. But I wanted to let everybody know that this is going to be a free flow talk for about 20 or 30 minutes. And we're going to get into lighting design. We're going to get into concepts and just the big picture of lighting and the career of Kelly. How do you pronounce your real name? Because you told me to call you Kelly.
Yes, my real name is Kylenne, but most people call me Kelly.
All
Kelly's a nickname for it, essentially.
And she's the president, CEO of
co-CEO with Chip.
Co-CEO with Chip Israel at Lighting Design Alliance.
Yes.
Welcome to the Design Build Ascend show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. And we've had to reschedule this a couple of times, as you know, and but we'll get this going, and
yes.
And hopefully we'll have no mistakes, and this one will be able to be recorded.
Nice and seamless, no problem.
But yeah, so I put together a couple of quick questions for you. One of the ones I wanted to talk about was just a little bit about you. Like, where are you from? What's your background? We're both from the Midwest. You know, we're both KU, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, right?
Rock Chalk, yes.
So I was wondering what you thought of that fact that there seems to be a desire to find people in the industry. And a lot of the people that we seem to be successful in this industry are architectural engineers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know for myself, I went into architectural engineering thinking I was going to be an architect. And I just kind of stumbled into lighting design at KU and never looked back. But for the industry, I think Archi in general is a great resource for all of us because lighting at the end of the day is truly that marriage of light, or art and technical. And architectural engineering really gives us all that background. Especially at KU, where we actually entered to the School of Architecture and graduated through the School of Engineering, which is a little unique, I think, compared to some of the other programs. We're a little biased as to why we think that was the best way to do it.
I think so too. I personally agree.
Yeah, I think, and it's also, it's a challenging major, but you really are immersed in all disciplines of the building process. So I think what's great is, even as a 23-year-old out of college and sitting in meetings, we understood the whole gamut of building and architecture and can have a conversation with engineers and can have a conversation with contractors. Even if we still need the experience, at least having the big picture of it, I think is a great base for all of our careers.
So what was your first job when you graduated? It wasn't with Chip, was it?
Sure was.
It was. Okay.
Yeah, but I actually had 3 different lighting internships all through college. So that's really how I fell in love with lighting, because I have been super lucky and fortunate to have some pretty amazing mentors.
Yeah, that's a huge asset.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I think after my, well, as you know, at KU, you don't even have a lighting class yet, your freshman year. I took the Lou Michaels art history, his history of architecture class.
Anybody that I wish we could have recorded every single class that he's ever been in,
absolutely,
is Lou Michael.
Yep.
The lectures are phenomenal. And
yes.
When we speak of Lou Michael, it's with reverence. He is truly one of the best educators I've ever met in my life, where you would be in a 2-hour lecture, you'd be handwriting the notes as fast as you can, and he would take from end zone to end zone, and he would walk out and go, I'm done. And the bell would ring at 2 hours. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and
people flew all over the world to see Michelangelo.
Yep, they would come to his lectures. It would pack the hall, even if they weren't in the class. It was pretty incredible.
I love him so
and
much.
I still am in touch with him. We email back and forth, probably just like you. But yeah, I would say Lou is definitely my original inspiration, without even knowing it at the time. Like really, just how he would talk before even electric light existed. How the ancient architects would bring light into buildings and architecture, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I didn't know about this, but. I think having that class just was a spark of lighting. And then living in St. Louis is where I grew up. There's some amazing lighting designers that happen to be in St. Louis. I worked for Randy Burkett. I worked for Tom Kaskowski at HOK. So they actually shared me for a couple summers as an intern. So I was really lucky getting exposed to these amazing mentors in lighting who are still amazing lighting designers to this day. And yeah, that really kind of jump-started my career in light.
Very, very cool. And that's also very rare to see someone in the lighting industry not really move around.
Right.
One of the things I see in the lighting industry is people will maybe start in the design world, move into sales,
Yep.
or maybe they'll be an architect and they'll move into maybe
Yeah.
interior design and then become lighting. But you and Chip really seem to have hit it off a long time ago, and
Yeah, I think
it's a
I
great
looked out
combo.
pretty early. I looked out pretty early, and I got a lot of great advice from those mentors. When, especially in the late '90s, there weren't a lot of lighting designer students, so we were pretty fortunate getting to almost, okay, choose your own adventure for your career at this point. And I had some really great advice from some of my mentors, and Chip to this day, of course, is one too. But they basically told me, with your personality, I think, you're going to hit it off with Chip. And they were right. So, because I think it's about, I found my home pretty early, which I probably didn't even realize at the time. But I think because too, at the time, just the projects that they were doing, and just kind of more risks, I would say, in projects, especially back in the 90s, early 2000s, compared to some of the other, we're lucky in, I think, this field where, we always say it's friendly competition. Everybody does great work, but it's really finding, where is your family, where is your home, because you're in the thick of it sometimes on these projects. And I got lucky. I think I got lucky at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, and there's a big part of your personality, I think, that shines through, and and Chip and you, I think, really you bounce off each other really nicely,
and there's a lot of trust.
You actually share in different skill sets, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Without that sort of marriage of who does the dishes and who does the takes out the trash, those two things are really benefit, and that's any good marriage, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because I think we both definitely have our passions, right, as far as whether it's an aspect of design or an aspect of technology or how we do details or how we present a concept package, but at the end of the day, I think having that same vision or just that desire to do good work and do the best work we can for the clients, is we're aligned in that, which is great.
All right, so number 2 question, I just wanted to share with you is I was just thinking about trends and what, I actually think I asked this to Chip as well, but what kind of things do you see maybe in the restaurant world or in sort of the theme park worlds? What kind of trends are you seeing now that LEDs are well established in the world? That's what it's going to be. You don't have to question that.
Yes.
The question now is, what kind of things do you see?
Right. Well, when it comes to the actual design, I think especially for some of our larger theming or theme park projects right now, color's been there for a long time, but it's about how we use that color, I think, and that comes down to controls and really having to, that's not a trend, but I think there's so many options out there for controls, of course, in how we want to present that to talk to each other. It's all about the entire park becomes a show rather than a building or area development. It's kind of, how do we bring this whole story of the lighting together? And I think controls really helps us with that. I think it's also, there's a lot of trends that I think are pulled from artistic light installations. And I think there's a lot of good inspiration for that today. But what we try to do is, what's that inspiration and how do we make it our own, or how do we turn it into something that is special to the project rather than just, trying to copy paste something. So it's really about tailoring everything to the project. In restaurants, I think we've always done a lot of restaurants, and restaurants are some of my favorite projects because there's so much detail packed into a small space, and who your guest is, what. We all go to restaurants. We all know what kind of, we want the mood or the feel to be like, depending on who the client is. But I think decorative is really at the forefront of that. It's very interesting to see where all these trends in decorative go throughout the years in both hotels and restaurants. And I think what we're seeing right now, it's all about how to play with materials and change those materials than what's expected, right? There's a lot of the little glass balls, but what's the source inside of that, and how can we change that, or how can we make that glass a little different, or to give you kind of an unexpected daytime appearance, not just the nighttime for the lighting. It's kind of thinking about sometimes what's not lit and what does that look like when the lights aren't turned on too.
What kind of issues do you see with controls? I mean, that brings up a really good point, because there's so many things that contractors have feel for, or opinions about. And so when you create your schedule, you're much more attuned now, than 10 years ago, with how is this going to be controlled?
Yeah.
What kind of things do you sort of require, or sort of what kind of standards have you created in
I
that
think
regard?
the biggest thing that we've had to incorporate is testing, because a cut sheet can say that, yes, this fixture or LED module or whatever it happens to be is compatible with X, Y, and Z dimming systems. But we know by looking at it in the field, well, yeah, it says 1% on when we're actually programming in the field, but visually to our eye, it's not 1%. That needs to be much lower. So I think that's one thing that we've built into a lot of our specs and standards today is not only do we want to test it on our end with just plugging it in and playing with a dimmer, but we want to test it on the dimmer manufacturer's end as well, to make sure that it's really visually doing what we want it to do and not just reading the number that it's supposed to.
Are you seeing more DMX? Or are you seeing more 0 to 10? Or Dolly? What are you seeing?
We're seeing a lot more DMX and Dolly. I think it's especially just the way that cost has come down. Would I say that today? Of course, the way things are coming in,
Well,
like as of
I
2
agree.
weeks ago.
I think it's even more accessible. I mean, you're seeing a lot more product with that as an option.
And you're getting a lot more finite control, and it's not really about the zones anymore. It's about controlling that the loads are so small. It's about really getting that. It's really just about getting that finite, low level, especially if it's a restaurant or a spa or something that's really crucial to have the lights down low.
We did and I can actually pull it. Let me see if I
Yeah.
can pull it up.
Okay.
Just give you an example of
Yeah.
that very problem. We went to, we had a project in DC, and it was for, let me pull this up. And it's actually, I think it's in our gallery. Let me just pull this up. This fixture right here is from Sofitel in DC.
Yep.
So it's like a bunch of trumpets, and it's really a cool fixture, right?
Oh yeah, well, that's
And
fun.
it's brass polished. The lighting design, the architect, the interior designer specified the bulb. It was so bright that even when we dimmed it all the way down, we couldn't get it to be dim enough.
Right.
And so we actually had to go and buy new bulbs that were 1 watt, which is they're not very often,
Right.
they're not
Right.
very available, but you get a 1 watt bulb.
Yeah.
Because there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Yeah.
9, or maybe even 10 bulbs per fixture. That's 10 watts of light.
Right.
It's a lot of light LED.
You just need a little sparkle on that too, right? With all the other layers. So yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's a problem.
I think and it's just that, responsible lighting, of course, we have energy codes and everything else, but we're just going over this with a new designer in our office. It's just we don't need a lot of light, especially with the way LEDs are today. We had this huge collection of outdoor pendants on a patio, and I think it was like a 7-watt lamp that was specified. I'm like, that is going to be very, very bright and hard to get down at night. So yeah, I think we're like at a 1.5 lamp or something like that. So.
Well, and Chip mentioned, just so you know, last week he mentioned that you guys are looking to hire. So
yes.
If there's anybody out there that needs a job, reach out.
Absolutely.
Great projects and great work. And
a lot of fun stuff going on. Yes, absolutely.
I'm just having we're on your website, and it just kind of passes through a bunch of projects, which are kind of cool.
A good collection, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Color is what pops on the screen, so getting all the projects that have color in it are key. Well, you and I have been in the industry for a little while. I mean, I'm not going to say the exact number of years, but it's
a lot. It still feels weird to say that, but it's a lot. I know. We used to be the babies.
We used to be the babies, right?
I know. Here
That's
we are.
Exactly right. Is there a project, and I hate for you to narrow it down. Your Lighting Design Alliance's resume is extensive. But I would imagine that there's a project where you learned something on the process that changed things for you. And I was wondering, there's got to be one that sticks out for you. I'm sure you have a few, but what is the one project that kind of sticks out that you learned something from?
There's definitely a few. I would say actually it's one of my first projects was for the city of Beverly Hills, and it was doing the Golden Triangle. So it was the master plan for Beverly Hills. And that project, I learned a lot. Number one, I was still young. And number two, it was really learning how to talk to clients from their perspective. It was very interesting because I was never presenting to an architect or it was a board of these very sophisticated, well-traveled women of Beverly Hills, basically. And I learned to reference certain shopping areas or the cities of Milan and Paris. Wow. And it was really how to pull references for the audience. And it was really more about wanting them to move away from their traditional poles that you see everywhere throughout the city to something more clean and simple, but also something that just felt like it elevated the triangle a little bit. So that project was really fun. It was before poles. There's many manufacturers now that make poles that have modular systems on there, but we worked very closely with Salux to develop a custom pole that everything had a home. So you still to this day see the little nodes on the poles and everything. I can't even look at a pole to this day 20 something years later without being bothered by like the strapped on signage or any of that, because everything had a home. But it was also an interesting play in paint, because we purposely ended up selecting a car paint for the pole. So they were actually dipped in a car paint. So the idea of it sparkles during the day, just like a car paint might, compared to just
metallic paint?
Exactly, compared to like your standard REL colors. They have a little bit of sparkle, but it was kind of an extra bit of sparkle for Beverly Hills. So that was a fun one, just because, again, being early in the career, but it had a lot of unique aspects to it. But probably one of my all-time favorite projects is, I said when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an architect. And I actually, as a child, said I wanted to be a Disney architect. Right. Spending too much time going to Florida and Disney World as a child. But I think it's funny looking back, because I always liked the nighttime experience as a kid going to those places. So I think at the time had no idea that lighting design was an option. But when I started at LD, I think that's what's great too, is we have a long-term history with Disney. And so I've gotten to work on many Disney projects, Chip as well. But Aulani in Hawaii is still one of my favorite projects, because it's a team that I'd worked with before. But I think what I learned on that project was it was another level. It wasn't just about a story. It was about a culture and really honoring a culture. And I've never had another experience like it. I don't know if I ever will again, but that project was special. We just had a 10-year reunion of the entire team late last year. Yeah. Really? So it opened in 2011. And I think we designed every decorative fixture on that project too. Usually we're collaborating with interior designers or architects, but we were fully immersed in every decorative fixture in the public space to the exterior. And it was really, there's strict foot candles that you have to meet, but it was every little decision that was made very carefully, because Disney has a requirement for pool decks. You can't go to Hawaii though and have 3 foot candles on a pool deck. It's just not the experience that people want. So It was about how do we combine these elements of fire, and it's about not introducing tiki torches, because tiki torches are Polynesian, so we call them our kukui nut torches, because that's how the ancient Hawaiians made light. And Joe Rohde, who's their incredible creative director that just retired for Imagineering, we worked very closely with him and his team on the project, and it was a special project. We'd even have prayers with the cultural consultants before some of the meetings, and it was about honoring there it is right there. Oh, that's Animal Kingdom. But
let's go back.
Another fun one for different reasons.
Is it? Which one?
It's to the left, third one down. That's the lobby there.
Third one down right here.
Yeah, so this is something we introduced on a lot of Disney projects too. There's always that big grand statement of the lobby and the decorative fixture, and really wanting to combine decorative lighting and architectural lighting within the decorative as well. If you look really closely at those fixtures, the glowy versions, to be very technical, are calabash bowls, which were tools that were used by the Hawaiians. But the more solid pieces are gourds. So these are all tools that the ancient Hawaiians used, but we turned them into light fixtures. But if you can look really closely in the gourds, those are actual directional lights to light the arches at night as well. So everything kind of has a duality.
On the columns?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So kind of that combination of all, then of course the layers of concealed lighting to uplight the ceilings and to highlight the mural at the edge. But yeah, we worked really closely with the whole design team on this too for all these decorative fixtures. It was a lot of fun.
And this sort of, not to take away from this design, but you seem to have elements like this in a lot of your projects, similar to, like you guys do all the Cheesecake Factories as well,
yes.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see these overscaled sconces where there's a lot of detail to it, you can stand in one in front of those sconces and kind of just hang out and look at it for a while.
Yeah.
And then you don't seem to grasp the whole thing. I mean,
right.
A lot of sconces are so simple. You take a look at it, you're done. Yeah.
But it has a feeling
there's a
about
feel
it,
to
right?
it.
Yeah.
You really want to spend time looking at it.
Yeah, Cheesecake's another long-term client. I've worked with them for 20 years now, and what's great about them is they appreciate light to the max.
You can tell just by the spaces.
Yeah, and it's
so
just they're so incredible to work with. The owner has a very strong vision, the design director there as well, and they're fun to work with just because they evolve. I mean, you can go to one Cheesecake and you still see like the columns with the faces, but 20 years later, there's been an evolution in their design, and I think that's really fun for us too, because we do work really closely with their design department on all those decorative fixtures, and it's all about, like you mentioned, color. We're very intentional about the type of warmth and the type of color. In those restaurants, it's really about, you want it to feel like a candle at the end of the day. If the design is the same, the lighting levels are tweaked for every single location. So
do you provide dimming that they can adjust by the staff, or do you leave that in the back? So
we make it automated, but it's a little different because even though it's automated, he's still the owner. Yes. So David Overton really wants the managers to take ownership of the lighting as well.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you introduce them to your culture? I mean, you got a new person come in, they arrive.
Yeah.
What is your steps to?
It's interesting. Yeah, I think, we definitely want to get them involved as early as possible. And we always say, especially now that we're in the hiring process, and we just had a great new team member join our team in December who has an interior design background. But I think we always make it very clear that we don't want you just sitting at your desk pumping out drawings, or we want you to know what you're working on. So even if it's, oh gosh, you're being kind of thrown into the fire on this, we have a deadline for this, but hey, even if it's a 5-10 minute orientation of what this project is, or here's the why, or this is the reason why we're doing this, just so they know the design and that they know there's intent behind what they're doing. But I think we try to get young designers involved in all projects. I think that's really important. We have a wide variety. You know, any day obviously we could be working on a theme park, a street lighting project, a landscape project, a restaurant. So we want them to be exposed to all those big and small type of projects. You get to see it right in front of your face.
Yeah, I asked Chip the question. You know, what kind of things do you recommend to give advice to younger people in your staff? So when you're moving into someone who's sort of in the company for a while, or they're a senior or a mid-level staff, what kind of advice do you like to give them? What kind of things would you give people at that level as sort of advice, maybe who's listening?
Yeah, I think, it's easier. The advice is easier to give when they're younger because it's about volunteer, get involved. But I think my advice is to stay inspired. I think that's, we can all get kind of bogged down by the day-to-day sometimes, but I was just talking to a client about this today. It's just, at the end of the day, we're doing lighting design, and I think we're pretty lucky to be in this career. I have to remind myself of that sometimes on the days where it gets a little mundane. Right. But yeah, I think it's really, we're so lucky to have this field where we can pull inspiration from so many different things, whether it's travel or if it's going just out to eat at night, or the colors of the sunset, which we're very lucky to have here in California. I think we have a lot of, there's inspiration all over the place. But I think it's really taking a step back sometimes and, making sure that you have those things to pull from. It's not just about the project. Sometimes it's about what are these other things that you're able to pull from for inspiration. Sometimes in a project, you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, actually we could do something like that. And it makes you think of a project, or how cool that would be to mix those colors, or hey, let's purposely keep that in shadow. It's more dramatic.
I so agree with you. Say we talk about being lucky in the industry. You work with a lot of architects, and we work with a lot of interior designers, and they get so deep into, they go wide in a project, so they'll spend their whole time on one project. Yeah. But because we get on a consulting fee, you have to make money. You have to have a lot of projects in the hopper. And I don't know, there's a lot. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, there's a lot of those. Like you'll find electrical engineers work just as many projects as the lighting designers. Mechanical, probably just the same. But when you talk about engineering, that makes sense. You're providing help to a specific part of a project. Right. But from lighting, you're doing design work, and you're dipping into that as well as sticking a hand out to the engineers and helping them along. Yeah. And it to me, it's a wonderful opportunity to touch so many projects.
It's true.
over
And
the course of your career,
yeah.
what have you not lit? I mean, I try to think of something you haven't done yet that you would like to have lit. There's not very many I can think of.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's, at least ones that I would want to have worked on. Yes.
Yeah, like give me some projects that I would love someday to be able to light this.
Yeah, I still think it'd be fun to do like an amazing bridge, or we've done bridges. Chip in particular worked on Vincent Thomas Bridge, which was an early LED study, which is interesting. But, and we've done some, but I think, you see some of these amazing structures that are just like, oh God, that'd be really fun to work on. Or, I think, we're really lucky. I can't think of like there's certain architects that are kind of bucket list architects that are certainly out there, and we're kind of lucky because we have a couple recent confidential projects that we're getting to work with some of those on. But yeah, I think it's we've done a lot of them, especially when you think about your inspiration in architecture. It is great. I think, and I maybe a couple years ago I would have said certain historic projects because we hadn't done a lot of those recently, but we have a couple of those going on now too. So it's just. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the world, and we're pretty lucky that we've gotten to touch a lot of them. And it's not just here, right? We've gotten to travel and go to all these amazing places too. So,
have you done a racetrack yet?
I personally have not, but Chip has.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like.
My husband is a big Formula One fan. So you just made me think. We went to a race in Singapore, like back in, God, I don't know how many years ago. But it was so cool because it was his love of racing and, me, the lighting designer, to experience this night race. And just the way that they lit that track at night, it's so bright, but it's so well done. Like it's just.
And angles are very key.
Super key, especially when you're thinking, broadcasting and the driver's perspective and all of that. So yes, that is not something that I have personally done yet.
So
yes. Add that to the list.
Stump you on something else.
Yeah.
Something along the line of the Eiffel Tower or some sort of large monument like Statue of Liberty. Anything like that?
Yeah. No, smaller monuments, but yeah, I would love to do something like that too. Especially my sister lives in Washington, D.C., so just walking around so many of those incredible monuments. I love walking around there at night. My daughter's not old enough where we can actually take her on some of the night ones. But yeah, we love going there, and I think that every time I'm there. Randy did a great project there for the Martin Luther King. Yeah, so on projects that are rare that you get to do we did a racetrack out in Asia. And then, of course, that was also attached to a golf course, which was a rated golf course by Arnold Palmer. And it's hard to do a rated golf course. You can do executive courses that are pretty small, right? Because the poles are going to be close by, and you can use poles multiple directions. You have easier angles, different angles, and it's smaller. Yeah. But this was a full size rated golf course in the country of Brunei. But I literally watched Arnold Schwarzenegger walk down the field with it. Wow. Can just have them put it on all their golf carts and yeah. And the other one I would say that I didn't get to do or haven't been able to chance, and I had the chance, was I was asked to light the pyramids in Egypt. Oh. And I turned it down. Oh. I was in the process of sort of figuring out where we were going to be. Hong Kong was in the process of doing the handover back to China. Right. And so we didn't know where we were going to be because we were living overseas. Too many unknowns, we decided to not risk it, and we just came back to the States. Yeah, I think that would have been a nice one. So monuments-wise, things like that scale, I would love to be able to do something like that. I think you guys... Those are the amazing once-in-a-lifetime projects for sure. And I think that's... Chip will say that too. I think what's interesting about some of my friends in architecture, they get that opportunity truly once in a lifetime to work on some amazing project. But because we do so many projects, I think that's why it's hard to narrow down favorite projects too, because we have so many of these projects that could be called once in a lifetime projects. And he and I talk about that a lot because it's but yeah, there's always something amazing out there that you're like, oh, that'd be so cool. And you're blessed because of that, because of the amount of work. I mean, a lot of these projects are one-off for the architect to be able to say, look at the project that I built. Yeah, because I know some of these projects are huge and they take so many people and so long to build. We have one more question, which is, I've left a bunch of things on the table. There are various kinds of things that we, that are custom products or
technology, and I thought you would want to grab one and then critique it, tear it apart, ask questions, see what you think. All right.
I'm drawn to this guy.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, might be the simplest to you, but it's I'm really drawn to it because I think especially right now, it can be used in many, many ways. Mm-hmm. So what, is this on camera to describe?
Yeah, he's pointing at you.
So what I think is cool about this is immediately I'm like, oh my gosh, we're already always looking for pathway lights that could be, really simple, and how can we direct? So, there's a variety of things that we could do with this, but it could be kind of cool too to just turn that guy straight, and maybe it's something that's, making a statement in a ceiling and has a different finish at the end. Maybe it's, you showed me that cool fixture you guys are building out there with just like a little edge that was lit on purpose. Mm-hmm. That could be really fun to just make it a downlight, but it still has that little glow on the bottom of it. Cool. So I'm looking at it more of all the things that we could do with it. Sure.
Well, that's great.
But it's really cool. It's really simple and really clean. And I think that's, what we're, especially if we're just trying to light a path, that's something where you want the fixture to go away and you want to see the effect of the light. But, something like this could also be turned into something decorative or a statement. So that's the one I was.
Well, that fixture is called the Slim Jim.
Okay.
And what's a couple of cool things about that fixture is, first of all, that finish is it's a brushed anodized.
Okay.
We actually work with a anodizer up in LA who does anodization for the space programs. Oh. So that's actually a proprietary marine, I would say marine grade, but it's actually clients that want to have something clean and modern that fits with their job, and it mounts to a stake. The original one actually was in between slots of railing on a bridge. On
a pathway or bridge, yeah.
And so they wanted to be able to have something that came up at the bottom, could be maintained, but not built into the
actual structure of it.
So it actually was really super clean. They actually took the railing and built a custom space for it.
Oh, space for it,
so every one had a little fixture in it.
Nice.
So it kind of reminded me of a Slim Jim when you're kind of break into your car. So that's the name of it, the Slim Jim.
Little Slim Jim. See, I remember that. Very good.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
it's fun.
So that's it. And anyway, Kelly, I want to appreciate your time. I know this is our second or third time we tried to program this into your schedule.
I know. My apologies.
No. Hey, I'm taking you away from your time at work and family and
this is fun.
7-year-old. So I appreciate your time.
Of course.
Thank you for coming in. And
thank you, John.
You are invited anytime to come back.
Thank you so much.
Especially if there's something you want to talk about, maybe a project or whatever.
Yeah, would love to.
And Chip talked about having your team come down one of these days.
Yes, for sure.
And see the factory and get some, just so they understand what we do. And
absolutely. No, I think it'd be so.
Anytime, no problem.
All right. Well, thank you. Rock Chalk as well.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk, absolutely.
Got to bring it back home for the Rock Chalk. Yes.
Absolutely.
We won't wave the wheat. That's okay.
No. But thank you.
Thank you.
We're very sad about Kentucky. We both mourn together in the lobby.
Yes, we're mourning the weekend sporting events of Lawrence and Kansas City. If that's okay.
Well, thanks again for coming.
You got it. Thank you, John. That was fun. It's always fun. Good question. Probably better than I